So these religious zealots, these people full of faith in the Western sense, when the Westerners talk about faith. Tecton TV calls them fundamentalist atheists, which I agree. Most of them come out of some form of Western Christianity fundamentalism, and they become atheists and they say Jesus didn't exist. Why? Because they believed in the Bible, as if the Bible is one book, or as if the New Testament was one book, or as if it agrees with as if the books agree with each other, as if it's a manual for living. They read the New Testament like it's one book instead of, okay, here's one writer, here's another writer. Hey, this writer is trying to contradict that writer on the point of, is it just for the Jews, or is it only for the Gentiles, or is it for both? Or, hey, that guy is obviously writing and he hates Paul. He's anti-Pauline. But these people, the ludicrous amount of ignorance and stupidity. I mean, there was a thing going around about 7 years ago, saying that they found the bones of Jesus, and they said, "Oh, that's a bunch of Christian hooey, these Christians trying to prove Christianity." If you found the bones of Jesus, you would disprove Christianity. In fact, it's a lot easier to disprove Christianity by using the historical method and affirming the existence of Jesus than it is saying, he didn't exist. Because when you say, he didn't exist, it means you know jack about the sources. No New Testament scholar, and there's plenty, a giant minority, like 30% of New Testament scholars that are agnostic or anti-Christian. And they won't say Jesus didn't exist because they know that he did. It's proof. Now again, evidence is not proof, but to this point, so much evidence that we could say it's a proven historical fact that he existed. John Dominic, Carson, Marvin Myers, Dale Martin, Bart Ehrman. I mean, I can just keep listing them off. Yeah, he existed. Again, fairly certain about what he said. There are many things he said that pissed me off. That I'm like, yeah, I don't dig that. There are many things he said. It's beautiful wisdom in that, and much compassion. What did the crucifixion mean? I mean, things like original sin, or the idea that he was a blood sacrifice to the penal satisfaction thing. Those things were ideas that were added by the Western Latin Rite of the Roman Catholic Church under the Pope. Hundreds of years later, in one case, 1,000 years later. But it's ludicrous. EarlyChristianWritings.com. You have the 27 canon of the West. Again, in the East, there are plenty of churches that are extremely ancient, that have different codices or different canons of the New Testament. But you also have many anti-Christian writing. Again, I mentioned Tacitus, Pliny, Suetonius. Suetonius I don't really count. Again, it's a little too late for my taste. But you have writings that come from, that are just as early, in some cases earlier than some of the stuff in the New Testament, that talk about Jesus. You have things that are disinterested comments that mention offhand, Jesus of Nazareth, that's sorcerer. Yeah, he apparently raised some people from the dead. And there's that garbage about Josephus. Oh, it was all forged. No, we know the half sentence that was interpolation. Not to mention, we have copies of Josephus that were not copied down by Christians. They were by Arabs, and they don't have certain parts in there, but they still talk about Jesus in that area where Josephus talks about Jesus. And then you go down, and James, the troublemaker, the brother of Jesus, natural-born son of Joseph and Mary. I believe that historical evidence points to the fact that he was a Samaritan. You have independent writings, meaning that they're not relying on each other. Mark and John did not rely on each other. They're the two earliest, I believe. I think Luke was the last. And Luke was written to counter Matthew. Just like the pastoral epistles were written to tone down Paul, to rein in the Pauline writings. And to counter the writing of Paul and Thecla. But the Didache, the Epistle of Barnabas, earlychristianwritings.com. And you don't just get one translation, you get 3 to 5 translations of the same work, so you can keep reading them. But just reading just the Gospel of Mark as it is, it reads as typical, reliable historical document. Though you'll notice that the last third is obviously earlier. And to me, it's obviously an eyewitness account. Papias says that it was written that the writer of Mark knew Peter, or Peter had talked to him or told him about some things. But yeah, again, saying that there is a historical Jesus does not mean, therefore, there must be the Trinity and Christ rose from the dead and there's original sin and the Pope is infallible. I don't know why people make that jump. If I were so inclined, I could... Disproving a religion is kind of oxymoronic because it's a religion, but I could disprove Christianity if I so chose by using historical evidence. And I would affirm the existence of Jesus. Say Jesus didn't exist, you do nothing to Christianity. I can talk to you privately where you can point stuff out and say, hey, yeah, he did exist, but I don't even want to mention that because I don't want to wreck anybody's, personal, deep, I guess you'd call it in the West, faith or hope or devotion. I don't want to fuck up somebody's devotion because that's a personal thing. But yeah, it's the height of stupidity, not even ignorance. Not even ignorance. It's not ignorance because you can go out there and find it. There's plenty of good scholarly sources and go to primary sources. Don't read a book by somebody. Go to the primary sources. That it's just stupidity. Or maybe you're just a troll.